How wouldn't you potentially think that a transgender female is more likely to fracture a woman's skull than another woman?
There is a difference between males and females. That is the reason that we separate the sexes.
This is actually not a terrible video, I'm going to be honest.
The science shows that there is no risk to trans athletes competing against cisgender women after these treatments.
I don't think what she said just then is true at all. This is what happens when I compliment one of these people. We need to be very careful about treating anything like settled science, quite honestly.
Sorry, that's just anti-trans.
I'm still looking for any good arguments for trans women inclusion in women's sports. I'm really not coming up with much. Often it's just, oh, well, there's not many of them, which isn't a good argument because, well, then what would you say if there were more of them? Quite simply. And the more trans women there are in women's sports, the more chance there is for a male athlete to dominate. So yeah, we've got the wildest trans sports opinions yet. What I worry is these people don't often make many positive statements of their own actual opinions. They just criticize others without stating why they actually think that trans women should be included. And I have a feeling they don't do that because they know there isn't really any good arguments. But obviously I can't prove that. I'm kind of reaching into people's heads, of course. Hi Shadow, I hope you're good. But let's see what we're saying here. Maybe she'll come up with something that I have not thought of. You never know.
Everyone, my name is Samantha Lux. Welcome to my...
Hi everyone. Sorry. It's very Josh Seiter, even though she's been around a lot longer than Josh Seiter in terms of trans.
Hi everyone, my name is Samantha Lux. Welcome to my channel. I recently saw this video of Dylan Mulvaney on The View, and specifically I saw a clip of Whoopi Goldberg asking her about trans sports.
These are men, you know,
competing against women.
You're assuming.
That's going to be a problem straight away, I'm guessing. Well, they're not actually men. Well, you kind of are, though, if you're a trans woman. Sorry about it.
That the women are weak and just can't do anything except...
This has become such a giant hot issue again for like the 5th year in a row, and yet people...
Wait, she's saying you're assuming women are weak and can't do... Well, no, look at the results between like males and females in most sports. I'm so confused by this, because surely if sport is split by sex, then trans women could still compete in the male categories. How's that a lack of inclusion? Well, there's kind of two things. The first is that trans women aren't usually very competitive with males because they take HRT, and like taking estrogen does lower your like strength some overall. It doesn't tend to lower it to a comparable level to a female person. The other thing is it's not gender affirming. So a lot of people will, I say argue it from that side, but honestly, when people argue for trans sports, it's very rarely that I see any actual arguments. It's mostly just calling other people bigots for not agreeing with them. But then it's like, well, why would I agree with you when you haven't presented a good argument? So that's why. But they still can. Like, if you want to be a trans woman athlete who competes with men, and you get some that do, then more power to you. There's no problem with that.
Even on the side of trans acceptance, Whoopi Goldberg do not understand the trans sports issue. For today's video, I want to provide you with a little bit more information because Whoopi's leaving out a lot and it doesn't look great. But yeah, with no further ado, let's tune into The View. Okay, so Whoopi's question is going to come up in a second, but I do want to play this one part from the interview because I think it's really nice.
But it's that I know that there's a possibility for love and understanding when a connection is made.
I read something about how advantages can exist and be fair. Well, they can, but when you're seeing advantages in female sports, there's still female people with that advantage. And woman really means adult female, you know?
And that's what I had with my family. And, you know, I think my mom said something along the lines of, God doesn't make mistakes, but I don't think God sees me as a mistake. And I actually am still really trying to keep a relationship with a higher power because I think that, you know, trans and queer people are entitled to that if that's what they're looking for.
I've seen a lot of people, specifically Michael Knowles, commenting on this interview, specifically this section right here, talking about how identifying as trans and saying that God doesn't make mistakes can't go together. And if you think that God doesn't make mistakes, then you must believe that...
Well, yeah, the argument would be is that you are what you are, and identifying as something else would be going against God, I imagine. I'm not a Michael Knowles fan, to be fair.
You know, if you're born a boy, you have to live your life as a boy.
The argument is trans...
Well, you kind of do. What does it mean to live your life as the other sex when you can't do the number one thing that the other sex is there for? which is either impregnate or become pregnant.
Genderism is true. Men can be women. Men should be permitted to behave as women. Men should be permitted to undergo mutilations, to radically change their body.
By the way, mutilations, when it's like consensual surgery, is mutilation like a good word to use? I think you're adding a layer of emotion that doesn't need to be there. If someone's making their own decisions, do you need to call it a mutilation? I don't know. I think there's problems with rhetoric on both sides, to be clear.
These chemical procedures, psychiatric treatment, perhaps all the way down even to little children. They must be permitted to do that because God doesn't make mistakes.
No. Advantages exist and a fair does make sense. But the thing is, people that have advantages, they're still within their own sex. The problem is that people that aren't of the female sex want to then come in and compete with female athletes when males tend to have an advantage. There's lots of other reasons why one woman might have an advantage over another woman, but they're both female. You know what I mean?
You catch the contradiction there?
I would love to just offer a different perspective, kind of like what Dylan is saying here. You can ask any trans person.
Yeah, we're saying it's not a choice. But if it's just identity, if it's just calling yourself something, because that's what self-identity means. It means calling yourself something. It's what you see as yourself. It's what label you attach to yourself. That's what self-identification is. Then that's a choice. If you were to say, well, trans is based on having gender dysphoria, then potentially you could argue it's not a choice. But that's not how we define it. So I don't know. You have to kind of pick one and stick to it. I can understand why people feel like it's not a choice because they feel this gender dysphoria. They don't know why it is. They probably will never know why it is. It's just something that seems to exist. So that's why it can feel like it's not a choice. But we don't define it based on gender dysphoria. So surely it is a choice. What I meant was, if a trans person has a natural advantage, I'm accepting. If they're writing it up, that's unfair. Yeah, but they're the other sex. Males have advantages in most sports over females. So a male person going into a female sport, competing against females, if it's one of those sports that males have an advantage in, then that person has an advantage because they're males. And specifically, we split sports by sex. Like, a natural advantage isn't being born with a penis. That's called being a male. Like, that's called going the other sport. Everyone else, like, two women, there might be one that has an advantage over the other. They're still female, they're still women. And if we're going to say, well, trans people should go in with the women's, being trans is just calling yourself something. So what, we're going to start getting men saying that they're women? Because they identify that way, they have to be let into the women? There's just not a good way of doing it. And if we're going to base it on gender identity, then there's a whole lot of stuff that's just not going to make any sense. And dividing things by sex is going to become impossible, which is what some people want, to be fair. Me personally, I think that's not always a good thing, depending on what it is. Plenty of aspects in life. Your sex really isn't very important. But something like sports, or something like prisons, things like that, it does matter what your sex is. And like, being a male isn't a natural female advantage over another female, because you're male. Like, you've got your own sport you could be going in.
Out there, this is not something that we choose. And therefore, if you think that God truly doesn't make any mistakes.
Yeah, you don't choose to have gender dysphoria. You do choose your like gender identity. And if it's based on gender identity, then yes, it's a choice.
Then you must believe that he made people trans. Why would God make this, living as trans, something that feels the most natural to us, something that is the most comfortable for us? If not, because we're supposed to be this way.
That is, I guess, an argument in terms of religion. That's why I'm not religious, so that's a much bigger reason why I don't use religious arguments. But yeah, that is an okay argument, I guess. Well, maybe God made me feel this way. You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't think religious arguments are the best ones generally, especially when arguing with what are mostly atheists. So yeah, I'll give it that one for sure.
I do believe this is how I was made. This is how I was created onto this earth. If you want to say that God created me, if you want to say that, nature created me, whoever created me, they made me this way, okay?
I wanted to ask you because
But then does this person define trans as being based on dysphoria or based on just identifying? Because the thing is, you can't really say that an identity is innate, because an identity is calling yourself something. There is a level of cognition required to be able to identify yourself as something. So it can be whatever you want, meaning, well, how can you say that's what you are in any kind of innate way when it's something that you've come up with and it's something that presumably is extremely susceptible to all kinds of biases?
Been all of this debate about whether transgender athletes should be able to compete. And last week, California governor...
Yeah, it's not whether they should be able to compete. It's whether trans women should be able to compete with women.
I'm sorry, I have to pause right away. I feel so bad for Dylan. She's there to like promote her book. Whoopi, leave her alone. This is exactly what people are talking about when they talk about tokenization. Like, just because Dylan is trans...
What? Got the opportunity to ask a trans person about a hot button topic. Dylan Mulvaney could quite easily have like headed it off if they're that uncomfortable with this kind of thing. Oh no, don't ask me about this, that, and the other. I don't see a problem with this. I don't know what she's complaining about, quite frankly.
Trans does not mean you should ask her about the trans sports issue, okay? Like, that's just not her problem. But
so on the one hand, you shouldn't ask trans people about this necessarily. On the other hand, you want trans people to like lead these kind of conversations. It kind of sounds like you want almost no one to talk about this ever. And that doesn't work. People have conversations whether you want them or not. And it makes it sound like those conversations are, what's the word? Inconvenient. Because the answer is, well, trans women probably shouldn't go in with women. Like, unfortunately, that's how it is.
Anyways, continue.
Pete, and last week, California Governor Gavin Newsom said that he thinks that trans athletes competing in girls' and women's sports was deeply unfair.
Based.
Now, I want to hear what you think, because I'll tell you what I think, too.
Yeah. The last time I played a sport, I was 6 years old, and I was on a soccer team, but I assigned myself as the nurse. So I sat with the Band-Aids. And so, in the words of Wicked, I am not that girl.
I'm like slightly fascinated by her eyebrows, but at the same time, do I do the same thing? Maybe I can't really. I do kind of the same thing, but these are like, this is like going off into space. Holy shit. Like, you see the distance between like this kind of end of the eyebrow and where the actual eye is. That's insane. Jesus Christ. This is what it was like when I used to like shave my eyebrows off and draw them back in because I thought my forehead looked way too big. I still probably do think it looks a bit too big, but I looked a bit crazy for a long time.
But a dear friend of mine, Skylar, he is a trans athlete. His handle's Pink Manta Ray. That's someone who I really look to for guidance. And I think that is what's tricky is like now stepping in this identity. I'm still like a baby trans. You know, I'm only 3 years in. Tomorrow's my anniversary.
Your friend went from female to male.
Hi, August. I hope you're good.
And is competing with other males.
Correct.
No. Yes. Her friend. Her friend went from female to male and is competing with other males.
Gavin doesn't.
Yeah, so you get female to male athletes. Not very often. They're almost never competitive. When you do see them doing well, generally it's things like race walking, long distance running, like endurance sports, which are sports that females aren't so disadvantaged over males. It's not so much about power, really. Like people aren't sprinting in marathons. The reason why you wouldn't, because you'll do yourself in very quickly. So yeah, like you do see them. You do see the odd trans male athlete, but it's very rare that they really go anywhere. I'm trying to remember who that guy was that I saw. He was talking to Lance Armstrong because, you know, that's who you want. That's who you want like weighing in on trans sports is Lance Armstrong. I can't remember. But he was like a race walking guy and he did okay. I think it was like an over 35s thing. He did quite well. But that's not one of the sports where females tend to lag behind males as much. Aren't all trans men called Skylar? Fair amount. You don't see many. It's interesting when they pick like quite feminine names, I guess. But hey, you know, it's your choice. You can call yourself whatever you want, technically.
Doesn't have a problem with that.
Well, I think part of the problem.
Yeah, Gavin.
Yeah, the reason people don't tend to have such a problem with female to males competing is because it's males that tend to have the advantage. There's very few sports where females have an advantage. And I'd imagine if there's the odd sport where females do dominate males and you started getting female to male athletes coming in and dominating, then yeah, the males might possibly have something to say about that. Because they wouldn't be able to go into the other sport and just dominate there. Because it's females that have the advantage. But on this side of the aisle, we don't tend to think of it the other way around, where in general, males have an advantage over females in sports. And if male athletes start dominating a certain sport in the female category, it's not like the women can just go over and start dominating the men's category, because it just doesn't work that way. But yeah, I mean, that's why people treat it differently. And you have to treat it differently because one has the advantage over the other.
And I had some words for Gavin. I just made a video on the whole Gavin situation, so I won't get into it now, the Gavin situation. But yeah, once again, like I'm about to say for Whoopi, it's this issue being mischaracterized.
Well, I think part of...
What's being mischaracterized? Oh my God. You can't just say it's been mischaracterized and then not expand. That's like me watching this person give an opinion, just saying, no, you're wrong, and then carry on. The new ContraPoints video, Jesus Christ, it's like almost 3 hours long. Like, I'm sure there's probably still things I agree with ContraPoints on, but to my mind, she hardcore sold out to the whoever's, you know. Not really very inclined to watch ContraPoints videos anymore unless it's for a specific purpose.
Yeah, Gavin, I had some words for Gavin. I just made a video on the whole Gavin situation, so I won't get into it now, the Gavin situation. But yeah, once again, like I'm about to say for Whoopi, it's this issue being mischaracterized.
Well, no.
What has Samantha Lux actually said about trans sports so far? We're halfway through the video, basically. What has she said? I've heard nothing. I've heard no arguments. I've heard no real opinions. This is what I mean. These people are so reluctant to actually give their opinion. They just tell others their opinion's wrong. Oh, you're mischaracterizing. Well, how? There's so many arguments I just never see engaged with. And like, I don't know. I guess like social media is not a good place to do it because you ask someone any questions about why they think it is that males should go in with females and you get called a fucking bigot with absolutely no attempt to engage, you know? So I don't know, man. I might continue looking till the end of time. Well, if I can't find a good reason why trans women should be included with female athletes, then my conclusion is going to be that they shouldn't be. And what we've been doing is pushing for an issue that no one wants, that almost no one is in favor of. Like, very few Republican voters, I would imagine, support trans women in female sports. I doubt all that many Dem voters do either. Like, truly, it's an issue that we should have taken the L on a long time ago. And the fact that we're still not, but not giving good like reasons as to why not, is frustrating. Like, you're pulling down the rest of trans people with you when you insist on dying on this hill. Because now we're seeing all this backlash. Would this backlash be there if we let up on issues like transitioning children or trans women in women's sports? I don't think it would have been as bad myself. And then we want to say we're being genocided. Well, how much of that is these people's fault? You know?
Well, I think part of the problem that the trans community is facing, and it's the same problem that women face, is if you don't know anything about our bodies, you don't know how it works. Mm-hmm. So when you come in and you say, oh, you know, these are men, you know, competing against women, you're assuming,
which it is,
that the women are weak and just can't do anything except be here.
This is such a stupid argument, man. No one's saying women are divided because they're also weak and can't do anything for themselves. Just look at the statistics. Why is it that male sprinting times are consistently faster on average than female ones? Why is it that all of these records, in terms of the entire population, males and females combined, why are most of these records held by men? The fastest sprinter in the world. When has that ever been a woman? You know what I mean? And then you think of team sports and contact sports and stuff. You're putting women at risk because naturally they're just not as strong.
Have you seen female athletes? They know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but they're usually not as good as male athletes. Oh, God. Is Whoopi Goldberg okay? What is she talking about? Why do we make the worst arguments of all time every single time?
So I'm not sure what's going on or why this is an issue.
It just is that females generally don't perform quite as well as males in most sports. So why would you want males in the same sport as a female. It's not about, oh, well, we're saying you're all weak and like pathetic and stuff. No one's saying that. Like, fucking hell. There's lots of female athletes that could probably destroy me in the same kind of sports that males are usually better. But I'm not an athlete, you know? Wild.
So, yes and, right? It's a yes and. Yes, female athletes are incredibly strong, incredibly talented, and like probably could beat the majority of men in the world, if I'm being completely honest with you. However, there is a difference between males and females. That is the reason that we separate the sexes.
Hey, are we approaching a point? Jesus, listen, I'm perfectly happy to agree with this person if they say something correct.
Athletes will outperform the top female athletes. So if you just allow in any, male, even if they are a transgender woman, into the Olympics, into these sports competitions, they will likely defeat the cisgender women. But Whoopi's actually leaving out a key factor to this, which is that trans women are not just allowed to compete in women's sports,
Not anymore, no, Jesus Christ. She's actually giving some... Listen, Samantha Lux is not the worst, like, TRA type out there. She will occasionally hit on something where it's like, you've actually got a point there. I'm not gonna argue with someone that I agree with. That's not how it is. Listen, when someone's right, they're right.
Most, if not all of these sports organizations require testosterone suppression in transgender women athletes to bring their athletic advantages that a male would have.
It's not even like this. I think most sports nowadays are just no male puberty. Didn't Whoopi Goldberg once say that the Holocaust was white people fighting amongst themselves? I fucking don't know. If she did, then that's gross, but yeah, it's not what we're talking about.
Down to a cis female level.
It's certainly true that
I've seen this person before. There was a Australian like sports panel. It was actually really good. They had trans athletes, they had like gender criticals, they had actual scientists that actually look into this kind of stuff. And this was one of them. And this person, they did some studies where they were finding that trans inclusion was possible, but I'm pretty sure the studies they were doing were on like long distance running, where females don't really find themselves disadvantaged. I think this person was at least willing to accept that quite readily. I remember watching a trans man beat a woman on TV. You mean a trans man as in... God, it's so confusing. You mean like a trans man as in like a male to female or a female to male? Literally couldn't hurt him with kicks and punches. Yeah, like contact sports. I don't know why anyone would be saying, oh yeah, let's let trans people... Was it Fallon Fox like cracked someone's skull or something like that? I'm just saying Whoopi Goldberg's opinions have always been garbage. Yeah, fair enough.
Even after hormone therapy, trans women will on average be taller, bigger, and stronger. But trans women will also have...
This is Dr. Joanna Harper.
...have disadvantages. Their larger frames are now being powered by reduced muscle mass and reduced aerobic capacity. And that can...
The thing is, there's evidence that even after 2 or 3 years, your male strength advantage might not subside. Where was it? There's a study that I like using. Yeah, so this study, Joanna Harper. Oh, is that... Holy shit. This is Joanna Harper. This is her study. This person here. This is her study. And in the conclusion, in trans women, hormone therapy rapidly reduces HGV levels seen in cisgender women. In contrast, hormone therapy decreases strength, LBM, and muscle area, yet values remain above that observed in cisgender women, even after 36 months. Suggests that strength may well be preserved in trans women during the first 3 years of hormone therapy. Wasn't it the NCAA? That was, they based it on 1 year of HRT? And we've got a study by a trans woman saying that even after 3 years, that might not be enough. Like, this stuff is not hard to find. I don't know why people don't look at this kind of shit. How old is the study? Well, the study is from 2021. Joanna Harper is this person here who is literally a trans woman herself. I watched a sports panel that she was also on. I think she talked about this study. And a lot of her stuff was based in like long distance running, which women aren't necessarily so disadvantaged on. And she's quite honest about that, to give her credit. But this is an actual trans woman herself who has an interest in like trans people in sports. You know what I mean? So if this person has any bias, it's more likely to be towards trans inclusion than away from trans inclusion.
Lead to disadvantages in things like endurance, quickness, recovery, etc. I generally advise governing bodies that they should require trans women to reduce testosterone to the values of natal females for a period of...
Yeah, like reducing testosterone to the value of a female. Well, that doesn't mean they won't have a strength advantage necessarily. It's not literally the testosterone level determines your strength. It's going to be a factor, sure. But just bringing down someone's testosterone, that might only do so much to bring down your strength, because human strength is like, it's a multitude of factors, you know what I mean? And people will say, oh, well, it lowers muscle mass. Again, muscle mass is just one thing. There's like a bunch of different factors to go into how strong you are.
Of time, and then look at the specifics of their sport as well, and see if there's anything more that needs to be done beyond testosterone suppression.
Like, I disagree with this person because fundamentally I'm against trans women in women's sports. But this person is at least like showing some kind of nuance. And like we can look at something like this. Like in sports where strength is a big factor, you're probably going to have to like bite the bullet, unfortunately, and say that it's not going to work. At least this person is like trying to inject some nuance and will admit like shortcomings and stuff like that. So I at least think this person is like honest. And this is her own study. Joanna Harper is this person.
In order to have a meaningful competition between trans and cis women.
So for the people saying, oh, it's just common sense that men and women are different and males and females are built differently. Yes, thank you.
Well, it's not just common sense. When we're talking about sports specifically, you can observe the advantage from one to another.
Thank you for that. What I would say to that is that the International Olympic Committee, the NCAA, sports professionals definitely do take common sense into account.
Well, hasn't the NCAA banned? Hang on. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the NCAA have changed their thing. And like the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, they're not usually the ones running things for any specific sport. The IOC generally goes on like passport markers. But generally, who is competing is going to depend on the actual sport governing body. And that's why we had problems in the female boxing in the Olympics. Because they don't recognize the IBA, which is the international governing body for boxing. So they were the ones doing that rather than the IBA, which wouldn't be permitting someone potentially with XY chromosomes, potentially with a DSD, such as Iman Khalif, which I don't actually know. Is this person male or female? There's evidence they might not be female, so that's kind of how that works. But the NCAA has like turned around on this. And people will say things like there's less than 10 transgender athletes in the NCAA. Well, the amount of people in there doesn't matter. Because then you're saying, well, what happens if there's more of them? What would your position be then? You can't solely focus on the practicality of it at this particular time, because that's always changing. And that doesn't say anything to your actual opinion of this in concept. You know what I mean?
Olympic Committee, the NCAA, sports professionals definitely do take common sense into account. Thank you very much. Everybody, including myself, including the IOC, including the NCAA, all have the safety and fairness of women as a priority. I don't want athletes that have trained their entire...
I mean, I will believe this person at least somewhat more than most people that say that kind of thing. Like, honestly, I don't have too much of a problem with Samantha's video here. I'm going to be honest. We're at least actually getting some, like, vague opinions and stuff. Like, the first half, it was kind of... I don't know, man. But this isn't actually... I'm not a fan of Samantha Lux by any means, but this is actually not a terrible video, I'm going to be honest. Maybe she'll drive it off a cliff. I don't know. Who knows? Let's see.
Entire lives to go into these sports competitions and get unnecessarily hurt or anything like that. But these professionals and these committees have determined that the science shows that there is no risk to trans athletes competing.
Okay, here we go. So why is the NCAA banned trans women then? And what science are we citing exactly?
Professionals and these committees have determined that the science shows that there is no risk to trans athletes.
Like, I don't know what science shows that there is no risk.
It's competing against cisgender women after these treatments. We can even see that there's no...
Yeah, that was cooked. Okay, listen. This is what happens when I compliment one of these people. They immediately drive it off a cliff. I don't think what she said just then is true at all. We need to be very careful about treating anything like settled science, quite honestly. And the NCAA has reversed course. They're saying that they don't want transgender athletes in there anymore. So I don't know, man. I wonder if did she not look it up? Anyway.
No risk, because the two examples that they bring up all the time aren't even true. They bring up Fallon Fox. Oh, she crushed a woman's skull in the MMA. No, she fractured her orbital bone, which is one of the
Yeah, that's not much better.
most common injuries that happen.
And the thing is, if it's one of the more common things, does that mean that trans women are not potentially more likely to do that? You know, you have to think about that as well. It happens anyway. Is it more likely to happen if a trans person does that? And by the way, like that is, you know, fractured opponent's skull. Well, yeah, that's still a skull fracture. You know what I mean?
Happen in the MMA, frequently done by cisgender women. I think it's very important.
That's not a good argument for transgender women in MMA. I don't know how you'd get me to agree to like MMA having like trans women in with the women's. Just fight men. You're a man, fight men.
And that when we talk about these issues, especially on a big platform like this with Dylan Mulvaney, who you know is going to get a lot of backlash just for showing up on your show, you can't just throw around that, oh.
Backlash for showing up on The View. Isn't The View like... I don't know, man. Doesn't The View have people like that there all the time? They had like Jonathan Van Ness and stuff like that. Like that. I don't think that's too controversial for The View, personally.
Oh, these people are just saying this because they believe that women are weak and fragile and not as capable as men. No, the fact of the matter is that males and females are different. That is not to say that women aren't capable and strong. That's just to say that
Yeah, so how wouldn't you potentially think that a transgender female is more likely to fracture a woman's skull than another woman? How is that not... How have those dots not connected in that case?
testosterone plays a major factor in athletic ability. If we want people to take us seriously and our position seriously, we need to explain why it is fair, why it is still safe for women.
Yeah, which you haven't. That's the problem. If males are stronger in contact sports, they're more likely to cause certain injuries than women are in each other. Like, just saying, oh, well, Fallon Fox only cracked someone's orbital bone, actually. Like, well... That's not really much of an argument, unfortunately. Like, here's a better way of doing this. Take the L. If there's that few transgender athletes anyway, then take the L.
Women, because nobody's in favor of making things unfair or unsafe for women, especially the trans community. Trans women have been allowed to compete following these criteria for decades now. And
yeah, because there's hardly any of us. So the chances are, until now, well, including now, to be fair, the chances are a trans woman is unlikely to dominate because there's just not very many trans women doing sports. So there might be people that might be, you know, if they were to pick up sports and train and get good, they might be able to thrash the women, but they might not be the ones competing. And the more and more and more that do compete with women, the more likely it is that one is just going to start dominating. What happens if a trans woman sets a record in a sport that a female is never likely to break, or it takes decades for a female athlete to break that, or another trans person breaks that record? It's just unconscionable to me. Like, there's a clear reason why we split the sexes here, and to start letting the other sex back in. Why? For gender affirming purposes? That's got nothing to do with sport. That's got to do with someone else's internal shit, which is kind of their problem, unfortunately.
And no trans women have won in the Olympics. Okay, there's less than 10 trans athletes out of 5.
Punching power is based on body mass and speed. Women have thinner, weaker skulls, brown bones than men. That's what I mean, exactly. So the argument she made about Fallon Fox doesn't make any sense because it's, well, a male athlete might still be more likely to crack certain bones than a female athlete. And that's still a kind of serious injury, you know what I mean? I don't think people typically go in, like, it's MMA, I guess you expect, like, injuries and stuff. But, like, it's not a good thing, you know what I mean? Oh, well, that's a common injury anyway. Might it be more common if we have more males in with the female sports? And then what? You know what I mean? Hi, Emma Doki. I hope you're good.
510,000 athletes in the NCAA. we are not an issue. So yeah, Whoopi, love.
Yeah, again, the numbers argument doesn't make sense. So what would you say if there were more? You can't just say, well, the situation isn't bad yet. Well, then what would you consider a bad situation? You know what I mean? At which point would you decide maybe there's too many males in this female sport? In which case, would there not have to be some kind of rule? You know what I mean? Like, you can, in fact, talk about issues in concept and deal with issues in concept and not wait for something to become a problem before admitting that there might be a problem and then dealing with it. Because what's happened up till then, if we decide later on the line, oh no, now there's way too many trans athletes in the women's sports and they're winning everything, what are we going to do? We're going to have to start going back, taking medals from people, erasing all kinds of data, erasing all kinds of records because it was males that set those records. That's like a big thing. Like, that would be a fucking heck of a scandal. So why not just deal with it now? Why not just nip it in the bud? And if a trans female athlete wants to compete, they can in the males. Nothing wrong with that. Or maybe, you know, if the demand becomes however much, maybe there should be a trans league. I don't know.
Love you, girl. I'm sure she didn't mean anything bad by it. I'm sure she didn't mean to like misconstrue the argument or anything like that. I'm not saying anything like that, but I just wanted to make this video to hopefully give anybody that saw this clip that maybe, you know, was like, what the heck? I want to give you guys a little bit more insight into why these policies are the way that they are. Dylan, shout out to you. Happy 3 years. That's pretty much it for this video. That's pretty much all I had to say. Love you, Whoopi. Love the view, all that kind of stuff. I'm not a hater. If you guys like this video, like I said, my name is Samantha Lux. I post new videos twice a week here on my channel where I give you guys my perspective, my experience as a trans woman. So if you guys are not yet subscribed and you'd like to be, go ahead and do that right now. If you guys like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up down below. And yeah, other than that, I think I'm gonna go. So thank you guys.
The NCAA oversees 24 sports, presumably up to 10 of those sports have a trans women competing against females. Yeah, well, I mean, their policy is now to not let them, so, you know, shouldn't really be there, I guess. These crazy leftist mouthpieces only create more hate. I mean, I don't know. It's tempting to lump this person in with some of the crazier ones, and we're going to watch a crazier one, don't worry about that. Hi, Nina Sophie, I hope you're good. But at the same time, you'd think this person would know that these are not good arguments. And maybe she is doing this because you can put out a video, you can just ignore anyone questioning you. But there was no decent defense of like trans women in sports. And the attempt made just kind of raises more questions. And that's the problem with all these videos. They just raise more questions. It's like, well, that answer's almost nothing. I think it should be based on skill, not sex, personally. Okay, so you want female sports to not exist. You want it to be males dominating most sports. Okay, fair enough. Very feminist of you. Good job. Anyway, how are we doing? Make sure you like the stream. Make sure you click like on the stream. Make sure you press like on your mobile device. You want to support me, you can join my Twitch. You can subscribe on Twitch. I'm monetized on there. You can subscribe to my Patreon if you want to consider a monthly contribution of, what is it, $3 or something like that. You can also you can't join my Discord today, ignore that. You can donate via Streamlabs. You can super chat, you can have your message heard. You can also buy music that I've made, or you can stream it on Spotify. That's not what I said and you know it. No, that's the end result of what you said. If we do it based on skill, then the males are going to be the dominant. Do you really think that women want to be competing at like seed 200 and below? You know what I mean? Will women accept that? Or would they rather just not have their own sport? So that's not what you said, but that's the end result of what you said. That's the logical conclusion. If you're going to do it based on skill and nothing else, you are basically recreating male sports. And women are going to have to languish in lower divisions.